So, welcome to Lisa Dubinsky Productions. I'm very privileged to say that I have another wonderful interview with Ofer Neiman, who is a prominent activist and Jewish Israeli citizen, and has incredible insight on what actually occurs in Israel and the intricate political landscape that we will discuss today. So please join me. And if you have any questions or any feedback, please leave that in the comments, because we will meet with Ofer on a regular basis, and I can bring those questions and feedback to him to answer, as this is quite a complex issue and one that has been ongoing for decades. So please, by all means, if you have any questions, ask us and I will endeavor to get them all answered. Thank you, and I hope you enjoy this episode. Tell me about what some of these hot button issues are at the moment. Yeah, especially the last 4 weeks.
Yeah, so apparently there's a growing sense among the general Israeli public that the war is a lost cause. One example is a statement by the IDF Chief of Staff yesterday, Herzi Halevi, who said basically that it's impossible to eliminate Hamas, that Hamas is an idea. But I think he was saying more than that, that even in terms of, just rooting out any armed cell unit presence of Hamas in the Gaza Strip, even doing that is impossible. And there's a growing rift between the Israeli mainstream, which probably includes most of the senior command of the IDF and the security establishment, the Ministry of Defense, and Netanyahu and the right wing. Netanyahu does not state, and he says that something along the lines of the IDF has to carry out its missions in accordance with what the government outlines and so on. And he still insists on defeating Hamas. And we're also seeing some interesting stats that there's a growing willingness among Israelis or growing sympathy for the anti-war protests. There was a public opinion poll published yesterday, and according to that poll, 63% of opposition voters, the liberal centrist folks, are sympathetic to the anti-war demonstrations. Some are sympathetic without intending to take part, but some are considering it. So that's an interesting perspective. And among the Israeli public at large, I think the stat was 41%. That 41% of Israelis are sympathetic to this idea of protesting against the war. I think around 10% of the general Israeli public right now are willing to take part in anti-war protests, which is quite significant, and it's only going to grow.
I noticed on your, on your Instagram, when you first started posting about the protests, they looked so small. And now it looks like it's 10 times as large, as many people are at these protests. Yeah?
There's a nuance here. Because, at first there were no demonstrations by the centrists against Netanyahu. There were only hardcore demonstrations against the war, which were very small. Now we're seeing these large demonstrations are mostly, certainly explicitly, against the government, not explicitly against the war. Often with some patriotic slogans about we are proud to serve in the military, and often with this added cause of trying to forcibly enlist the Ultra-Orthodox into the IDF, which is a militaristic cause. These are the large demonstrations that you're seeing. Within these demonstrations, there are smaller blocks of explicitly anti-war demonstrators. So in a way, it's a bit misleading because, I mean, if you look at the entire, these entire large demonstrations, overall, it's not explicitly anti-war. But then again, if you look at the stats, you realize that these liberal Israelis, they are leaning more and more towards support for the anti-war cause, even if the rhetoric among most of these demonstrators and the speeches up on stage is not explicitly anti-war. It's sort of inching towards anti-war.
Yeah. Can I ask, because I'm ignorant on this topic, as to why they are protesting for the Orthodox Jews to join the military and start serving in the military? Why is that such an important topic for them?
Yeah, so
Burnout?
I think, yeah, no. Yeah, that too. But I think that, I mean, this has been going on for years. I mean, there's so much anger among secular Israelis at ultra-Orthodox who do not serve. It has to do with these tribal wars, tribal politics within Israeli society that secular liberal Israelis perceive the ultra-Orthodox as a threat, also as a demographic threat because they have larger families. And they are, from their own perspective, fed up with what they see as religious coercion.
Right.
Various ways in which the ultra-Orthodox impact Israeli politics. For example, and here I agree with the liberals, no public transportation on Shabbat, on Saturday, because, respecting Shabbat, which is absolutely wrong. Here I agree with the liberals, but this has to do with the influence and political power of the ultra-Orthodox.
Right.
Also, I would say that the ultra-Orthodox have been very efficient in at gaining financial benefits from the state's budget, support, welfare, housing, and so on for their communities. And this is another frustrating factor for secular people. They are very well organized, the ultra-Orthodox, politically. They know who to vote for. They have their own party. Their politicians take care of their own sector. And this is something that's not going down well with secular liberal Jews. And then on top of that, the fact that they're not serving, especially at times of war,
Yeah.
So ultra-Orthodox soldiers, basically, and there's a major disclaimer here, but at least the view among secular Israelis is that the ultra-Orthodox Jews are not serving. They don't have to die in this war.
And yet they support
and it also, and it also has to do with the fact that they are even more right-wing, at least nominally, then the centrists here. They are part of the Netanyahu bloc. They have been for years. It used to be somewhat different. So they are sort of hardcore right-wing. So this is another, and here I do have some sympathy for this argument, at least if it's directed specifically at the senior ultra-Orthodox politicians, because some of them are really pro-ethnic cleansing and so on. So there's a point here. And beyond that, the military is a sacred cow here in Israel. It's perceived as a unifying element, and Israelis want to hold on to the IDF because there's not much else to hold on to. So this is another reason why they want to forcibly enlist the ultra-Orthodox. Now, the caveat here is that we already have some ultra-Orthodox soldiers. We definitely have so-called nationalist Orthodox folks, the ones like the hardcore settlers. So maybe they're not exactly equivalent to the ultra-Orthodox folks with the black clothing, but they are very much Orthodox, and they are they serve big time in the IDF. They're officers, those hardcore settlers. And you do have some ultra-Orthodox soldiers, units here and there. So it's not like the ultra-Orthodox are not serving at all, but overall, there's a major chunk of sort of the classical, traditional ultra-Orthodox Jews who are not serving in the military. And so overall, for me, it's a repugnant cause, of course, militarism, and trying to find more soldiers for the IDF, especially, in times of genocide. But this is right now, this is a major component of the liberal protest against the Netanyahu government.
That makes a lot more sense now to me. Benny Gantz, he resigned since we last spoke. What does that mean for the government? Does it mean anything at all?
Yeah, so this his presence in the Netanyahu government had a sort of a dampening effect on protest and on the way Israelis see the war, because there was this notion that, okay, this is a time of emergency and we all come together, and now the centrists are also a part of the government. It's a sort of unity, or at least an emergency government. We're all working together. Without Gantz, you only have a hardcore right-wing government. Basically, Netanyahu's Likud and 4 religious parties, 2 of them ultra-Orthodox, 2 of them, one religious Zionist, and the other one sort of maybe half religious, but very much right-wing, Ben Gvir's party. This makes the government and the war less popular. I mean, I think this makes Israelis start asking questions.
Right.
And
so
it's going
a
to be
good
more
thing.
difficult. Yeah.
Yeah.
Overall, it's a good thing. Yeah. Overall, it's a good thing. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it should be added that Gantz is not anti-war. I mean, he is perhaps more open to the idea of some deal with Hamas, and more sympathetic to the plight of the captives and families of captives. But overall, he would definitely support IDF redeployment, at least to the borders of the Gaza Strip, and ongoing attacks on Gaza and violence against Gaza. And you know what? I'm not even sure that he would be willing to commit to a full lasting ceasefire after an exchange deal. Probably, but I'm not 100% sure. Netanyahu is unwilling to commit. And that's the main bone of contention around the current initiative, because people are asking why is Netanyahu sort of rejecting the so-called Netanyahu initiative announced by Biden. So there's a certain gap here that Netanyahu perhaps is willing to support a deal, but he's certainly unwilling to commit to a lasting ceasefire. If you ask me about Gantz, perhaps he's willing to commit. I'm not sure about it.
And the fact that a couple of days ago, 4 hostages were saved, that's what we want to call it, by the IDF, and the horrific deaths. I mean, wonderful that they saved those hostages. Wonderful. So, what a relief to have those people back. They were so traumatized, but at the expense of such a horror story for the poor Palestinian and the Gazans that have, when there were hostage deals on the table that could have taken out hundreds of hostages, and instead they did this crazy, that's what I think, it's a crazy, what looks like a crazy heroic thing out of a massacre.
It's a massacre, I would say. Yeah.
And yet people are celebrating it in Australia.
Because they are desperate. They're desperately trying to find some sort of comfort, I don't know, a silver lining, any way to reframe this war and genocide as a success story for Israel. And I don't think they will be successful. So This was a massacre. This was absolutely wrong. And by the way, an Israeli officer was killed too. So even those who only worry about Israeli lives.
Yes,
So
yes.
they rescued 5 and lost 1. Apparently, and this still cannot be verified, but there are reports about 3 or 4 Israeli captives being killed in that operation as well. And I think that right now, if there were still any Israeli captives above ground in Gaza, then they will be taken to the tunnels now. And even families of captives are saying that this will not work. It's impossible to rescue captives that way.
Why did why are they not accepting the deal? Why? I mean, they're so hell-bent, they're so determined to, just be fixated on Hamas and destroying Hamas and as many Gazans as possible is what it appears like, which to them is just Hamas, the citizens of Gaza. As we've spoken before, they're all complicit, rather than actually being pragmatic and moderate in their views and going, we could have gotten out however many hostages, but instead we created a massacre and we only freed, I thought it was 4. Did you say it was 5?
Perhaps 4. I'm not sure. 4 or 5.
Three men and one girl, Noah.
Yeah.
I think, or if
Noah,
that's how you pronounce. No. Yes,
Noah,
yeah. She looks so happy, and I'm so relieved for her. And but what kind of trauma will this girl have to go through now, knowing how many lives have been destroyed because she was saved? That's how I think. At the moment, she may not be thinking that. None of them will be. But the post-traumatic stress that they will have to go through, knowing how many lives have been destroyed and massacred to get them out. I don't know. That's just how a normal person would think. Is anybody considering what rehab and what mental health support these people now need?
But I mean, so I guess from an Israeli perspective, the top priority was to get them out, and then you can treat their PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. There's huge PTSD among Israeli soldiers. More and more suicides, burnout.
And we don't hear about
you also
that.
asked me. You also asked me about burnout as a reason for support for forcibly enlisting the Ultra-Orthodox. Yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, if you look at especially mothers of Israeli soldiers, they're screaming, our soldiers, especially the conscript soldiers, the 19, 20-year-olds. They're completely exhausted, which is true. Burned out,
absolutely
traumatized. We need more soldiers, and you know what?
They just need to stop.
Perhaps for the cause of this war, the Israeli military doesn't have enough soldiers. Perhaps they do need more soldiers. Logistically speaking, the Israeli military is not so large these days. So this is another reason why they are shouting for the enlistment of the Ultra-Orthodox. So, but back to PTSD. There's so much trauma here. So the captives, the ones who are still alive, and in Gaza, I don't know, less than 100 soldiers, way more than that, and severely traumatized. So the amount of trauma in Israeli society is huge.
It's huge. And I was reading, one of the hostages' stories, and she was this lovely 75-year-old woman who had been an activist for decades, and she was teaching Arabic, and she really believed in peace. And it just broke my heart that she spent 53 days in Gaza, and she now says she no longer believes in peace anymore. And she just doesn't, she can never see it happening, and she's just broken. And that's I guess what a lot of people, a lot of Jewish people are focusing on, just those stories. And I understand that, and I feel so much heartbreak for each one of those hostages. But what about, we forget about all those Palestinian people, kids, taken in as detainees and tortured and held without trial, and we call them prisoners. Yeah? Aren't they hostages too?
Yeah. So I want to be careful here, of course.
Same.
A lot of sympathy for her case. The thing is that lots of these peacenik Israelis, they focus on peace. They don't address colonialism. They think that, if they can drive Palestinian patients to hospitals and learn Arabic and organize aid packages for Palestinians. This is all that needs to be done. And they don't understand that there's a system of apartheid and colonialism here. And I think that for these people, if it's easier to come to the conclusion that, I tried to help Palestinians, but look what happened to me. So I'm no longer a friend to Palestinians. Count me out. I no longer care for peace.
Yes.
So I understand that she's been through trauma. I have sympathy for all of that, but there's a problem even with the term peace activist, because right now peace should not be the focus. And when I hear these stories about so-called Israeli peace activists who are sobered up, or now they no longer care about Palestinians. So my question is, what does it mean to be a peace activist? Maybe it's the wrong term here. We need anti-apartheid activists, anti-colonial activists here.